Hey there, Coach Patrick here. In the new hat. Still got the tag on this bad boy. Look at this. I love it. So here we go. Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. And I'm excited to talk to you this week about early season testing results. So what are people normally talking about in the early season, right? They're talking about their races for the upcoming year. They're talking about their goals and ambition. They're dealing with logistics. Like if you've got someone who's like a little bit ahead of the game, maybe they're planning. I got a couple of good chat groups who are doing some serious planning for this year. Always super fun thinking about the race. Not everyone's talking about training, and nobody, my friends, nobody's actually talking about testing. So in season, when the Norwegian freight train is doing blood lactate all over the Kona highway and they're on YouTube, everyone's like ripping and really excited about what testing means and where they're at. But at the end of the day, testing is something that we do inside Endurance Nation really frequently, about every 6 to 8 weeks. I'm not talking every 4 weeks. Some programs really want you to test all the time. We're talking about functional testing here inside Endurance Nation. So what is functional testing? Functional testing is actually just a test you can do on your own in a controlled environment. So it could be on the bike with a ramp test or a 20-minute test here we do with the bike, or you can do something on the treadmill or outside for a 5K. And those are the two main tests we use. For swimming, we usually do, it can be a combination of like a 1K time trial or 5x200 on set rest. Either way, what we're trying to do here is replicate your ability to perform under load, to get numbers to modify your training and make sure that the work we're doing is really specific. And most importantly, to help you get ready for race day, right? So we know what numbers to run off of. You can't just say, well, I did this last long run at this pace, so that's going to be my run on race day. It doesn't work that way, right? Long runs are an expression of your fitness, but it just gives us data on how your body handles long runs, which is important, but doesn't determine how you do long runs, right? Right. In other words, we don't just build bridges and drive trucks over them until they break, and then we use the last truck and weigh the truck and then figure out what we should do to build the bridge, right? That's just inefficient. Probably fun to watch, but not great if it's your body and your time and your aspirations for race day. So functional testing is really important. So now let's move the conversation earlier in the year and talk about functional testing right now. When we're talking about, it's in February right now. So why functional testing so important now? So inside Endurance Nation, in case you missed it, we have a program called the Out Season. It's a 14-week program. And during this time, we get really strong and fast on the bike and on the run. And we do it 2 ways. On the bike, we do interval work, really focused, quality, high-end stuff. And then on the run, it's mostly about consistency. Depending on what program you're in, if you are run healthy and you're in a run safe environment, like not ice or the dark, then go ahead, you can put that stuff out there and do it, right? I think that's really helpful. Now, when we back up and we say, okay, why else would we be testing? Well, we test it in the wintertime also because we want to capture our progress. Progress is really hard to discern. And most of us as endurance athletes are calibrated to look at progress based on like total training time, total training load. Those are all numbers, but they don't actually tell us about our fitness. It just tells us how much work we're doing. And you can have a 200-mile week that was really easy. You can have a 200-mile week that was impossible. You can have a 200-mile week that builds you up and a 200-mile week that's about to kill you. And the only difference we know in that is where your fitness levels are, which is why we do our functional testing. So in the wintertime, we have 3 functional testing opportunities inside Endurance Nation, week 5, week 10, and week 14. It's a 14-week program, right? So we don't even test at the beginning of that season, but the first test, just trying to get things sorted out. Where are you? First test is usually the worst test. Most people not so great at it. It's okay. It gives us numbers and data that we can use to calibrate for the second test. Second test is pretty good. And that second test really gives us a sense of the last 2.5 months, what's the value we're deriving from the actual work you put in. By now you tested once, so you can be a little bit better. Then we have our week 14 test, which is really the test I'm talking about today. That week 14 test captures all the work that we've done in the wintertime and puts a pin. And typically, it's a very high pin number relative to the rest of your year. You don't have a ton of fatigue. You've been training indoors. Maybe you're sick. Maybe you've got some other compromising elements to your composition right now. But generally speaking, it's a high mark level for your fitness. Soon, we will move in season. And with fatigue mounting, those numbers will begin to drop a little bit off that high end. It's okay. Rarely do we end up with our peak FTP fitness heading into an endurance event when we're doing endurance training. Yes, there are outliers out there, but for the vast majority of us, the fatigue takes away our ability and our top end around threshold numbers for the bike and the run. But this test is super important, and I need you to understand how you process the numbers you get out of the test. So if you've done it right, just so you know, to remind you of our benchmarks, ideally by the time you do your week 14 test, your numbers are at or higher than your best numbers from last year. So if last year your FTP on the bike was 205 watts, this year we want you to be at 205 watts or maybe a little bit higher. plus or minus a percentage point or two, but somewhere in that 200 to 210 range, we are winning because you've already got peak fitness from last year in your legs now, and it's February and we're rolling into the rest of the year. That's phenomenal. So that's the kind of number that we're looking for. Similar on the run. Now, at the same time, it's not a number that we're going to try and chase or push harder. So if you're higher in the run, or if you're better, I should say, if you're better in the run or better in the bike or better in both, right, or not better in either of them, these numbers are not limiting, but they're also not meant to be numbers that you have to continue forcing and making work really hard. Transitioning into the season means you want to look at that number and say, that's amazing, that's my best. But we don't try and go beat our best every single time we work out. And that's the challenge with these functional testing numbers, is that you're in the environment, you're in the setting, you're pretty amped, you love the number, it's shiny and new, and you want to get after it. And that's a really fast way to ruin your fitness, as we need to evolve into the rest of your year. So early season numbers are targets that we set to drive our winter training, and they're benchmarks, high water marks, if you will, for what we think our fitness will be in that functional high end for the rest of the year. So even though we fatigue over the course of the year and that FTP on the bike, for example, will degrade, that's no shame. That's not a bad thing about degrading on your functional fitness. That's fine. But when we rest and test again, that number should be back up where it was, because you can rest and get back to it. So if we're doing our training right, you don't actually lose that high number. You're just not manifesting it on the regular because of the fatigue in your legs. So if you haven't tested yet this year, please Google Endurance Nation functional testing, find the test that fits you, and please go do a test. If you don't test right now, you have no idea where you are. You have a map. You know where you want to go for your race. You know all the beautiful places you want to see and the beautiful people you want to come with you, but you don't know where you are on the map. And functional testing allows you to find out exactly where you are, which with now, here in February, will give you plenty of time to adjust your schedule to make sure you're going to be successful. Testing is hard. It's like having to take a good hard look at your credit card statement. It's getting on the scale and look at that number. But this is one of those doing hard things that we have to do as endurance athletes so that we can make better decisions on a regular basis about our training, our race pacing, and overall keep ourselves super healthy. It's one thing to have high self-confidence and self-belief and knowing that you can do almost anything. And honestly, the majority of athletes I know, you included, absolutely can do anything. The challenge is, how well will you do it? And the better you know yourself, the better you know the conditions, the better you know the race, the better decisions you can make, and the better performance you'll have. So do yourself a favor. Again, endurancenation.us, go check out our programs, our free resources there. Go Google Endurance Nation and then testing, functional testing, see what comes up. If you've got questions, always post the comments on Instagram, Facebook, etc. Happy to answer you back. Otherwise, I hope you're testing. I hope you're having a great February. I'll talk to you soon.